I know Kirk knows better. I know he knows better. I can tell, but he's not saying it. And he just won't say it. For what? Sorry for what? Being so competent? I wonder why they call this the Bird Nebula. Open the Bassard collectors. Come in, Bridge. This is engineering. I think we just found out why this place was called the Bird Nebula. Well, look at that. We're over halfway done Strange New Worlds Season 2. Time flies when you're having fun. Time also seems to fly when there's only 10 episodes in a season. That means 6 episodes in, that's 60% of the way through. Can I form an opinion about this season yet? Nope. However, I will say this episode is the first episode that I think I can easily say was just good. This is a good episode. It's fun. It's not perfect. It's lost in translation. Thankfully, the themes on display, the plot, the ideas were not lost in translation when it went between the writer's brains and our brains. Sometimes when you're writing things, you can get carried away. And you can write something that makes sense to you and doesn't make sense to the audience because you have internal working knowledge about how it was written. Of course the audience is going to understand that. Of course it makes sense because of this and this and this. That didn't happen this episode. This episode makes sense. It feels like a well put together puzzle. You watch it again, and you get a little bit more out of it. Oh, that's why this happened. Oh, that's how this worked. However, I will say, there is a giant Spock-shaped hole in this episode. I've called this show the Spock Show before, seeing as how much Spock we got, but this is one time where I think we could have had a lot more Spock, and for good reason. This is Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 6, Lost in Translation. Let's get this review out of the way. Let's hope the review doesn't get lost in translation. It's funny. This episode, if you watch the previously on section, I defy you to make sense of what's happening. If you look at the way it condensed the past 6 episodes, kind of, into this intro, in the before, previously on section of this episode, if you know what I'm talking about, these events seem totally unrelated. You're trying to do a previously on section from a show which is like totally episodic. It felt very scatterbrained. I don't think we really need it. I don't know how necessary it is. I mean, how many people are watching this episode in a non-linear format? That means video on demand. Do we really need it? I don't know. For a show like Picard or Discovery, where one episode always leads into another, maybe you should be able to get the broad points across in your previously on segment. But this one, if you watch it, it's comical how unrelated the events seem. You'd be thinking, what kind of show is this? All these things don't make sense. We're back in time, and then we're playing charades, and then there's this alien thing, and then we blow up a ship, and man, what is all this? Well, it's Strange New Worlds. Another point, just to get this out of the way, I don't know if you notice this, but there's things that happen on screen that are explained in the logic of the show, and then there's things that are on screen because something's going on behind the scenes. So I always, when I'm watching shows, I'm always looking for like backdoor ideas, like shoving in backdoor ideas to do testing. Sometimes we actually use the real audience as the test group, like a focus group. Before you release something, you want to see how people are going to respond to it. Sometimes we can actually use the audience for that. I don't know if you knew this, but Strange New Worlds, Pike is the captain. We've been getting so much Kirk. Kirk showed up last season in an alternate timeline. He showed up again in the season in an alternate timeline. And now, third time's a charm, he's showing up for the first time in the Enterprise, for real, in our timeline. The same episode he's showing up, they gave Pike a different badge. I think this was because he was promoted to a fleet captain momentarily to control the Farragut in the Enterprise. I didn't look forward to see if this was a permanent upgrade to his badge or something. I don't know. I didn't see any screenshot from the next episode. But do you think that they showed Pike with a different badge in the same episode where we saw Kirk in our timeline for the first time in the Enterprise for real, to establish the idea in the mind of the audience that Kirk could replace Pike? Do you think we are being focus tested right now to see if we're willing to accept Kirk as taking over for Pike soon? I got this strange feeling that maybe Pike's actor wants out. Huge jump to conclusions. I am aware of that. But it's just a thought that I had watching this episode. Tell me you weren't thinking it. Like, are we shopping around the idea of Kirk taking over in season 3 of this show? Just a thought. With that out of the way, let's see what's going on. Let's see what's down and dirty with the plot of Lost in Translation. We have Pelia, we have Uhura, we have Kirk, we have Pike. A real ensemble cast this episode. However, whereas past episodes felt like they had a thin veneer of Ortegas over what was clearly a Pike episode, this episode is clearly an Uhura episode with an ensemble cast who also gets to win. Call it good writing, but everybody kind of got a good win this episode, and I was really happy about that. At the same time as delivering what felt like a succinctly Uhura episode. Thank you. I had mentioned, I think in my last review, that I was waiting for an Uhura episode. I was waiting for a Pelia episode, waiting for an Ortegas episode, which I don't know if we're getting now. But this is the Uhura episode. Next one better be Pelia. Maybe the one after that, I don't know. We have to go to a deuterium mining station, essentially. This is like a gas station, to put it very simply. To put it in a more complicated way, we need deuterium to fuel the warp core in our ships, okay? Deuterium and its antimatter counterpart are what facilitates the reaction in the warp core, mediated by dilithium crystals that creates warp plasma that causes warp in inner cells to move our ships. So we need deuterium. It occurs naturally in space, which is why we have Bussard collectors on our starships. That thing on the front of the nacelle. Thank you. Thank you for showing Bussard collectors doing what they're supposed to do. Thank you for showing it on screen. Bussard collectors are intended to absorb stellar material, in this case being deuterium. We need all kinds of different things to power starships. We can't just make matter of nothing. Okay? We have matter resequencing, right? We have protein resequencing. We have all kinds of material scientists who can give us all kinds of new materials, exotic materials, new things. But, we can't make something from nothing. So we do need intake into our starships. And this is what the Bussard collectors are supposed to do. And we're showing it visually on screen, which is something you don't often get. And we got it here because we're in like a stellar nursery. Bannon's Nebula, I think they called it. And when you're in a nebula, something's going to go wrong in Star Trek because nebulas are the source of immense danger for whatever reason. And we have our gas station here. It's collecting deuterium. And we don't waste any time in getting our own deuterium into our tanks in the Enterprise in the way that I just mentioned we did. Looked beautiful, by the way. All kinds of cool like particle physics. But we're having a problem. We got to get this deuterium manufactory online pronto because we are near Gorn space. Let's just put a little spooky edge on an otherwise cute episode. Yeah, and I would call this episode cute. It's scary and cute in a way that only TOS episodes could be, making this feel uniquely TOS, which is very cool. Just as an aside, we need to get this processor online. Priority 1. We're controlling the Farragut. We're controlling the Enterprise. We're buzzing around this thing. What's going on with it? Pelia and Una are down on the deuterium refinery. We need to figure out what's going on there. Uhura gets, "Sir, I got a message. I can't parse out what it is." Wah, 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 wah. Oh, great. We're contacting another strange alien we don't know anything about. Last episode, charades, involved an unknowable alien entity. And it's happening again. How long has it been since these 2 episodes for this crew? Imagine being on the Enterprise and thinking, wow, we just met another unknowable, impossible to understand alien entity. Isn't that strange? The universe is a lot more complicated than I thought it was. Do you have nightmares? I wonder, is that something that bothers you? Does it keep you up at night? Not just how much you don't understand, but how much you are incapable of understanding about the universe around you, the universe that you fly through every day as your job. You could be dead in 5 seconds from something no one would be able to understand. It's a frightening thought, but it beats sitting around on Earth doing nothing, I guess. I would know. Uhura goes into the turbo lift shaft. Just like how nebulas are scary, turbo lifts are also scary. You know when a character alone walks into a turbo lift and the camera hangs on them for a while, that something spooky is going to happen, and something spooky does happen. She sees a ghostly apparition of Hemmer. Ooh, too soon? I don't know. I guess it depends on who you ask. And it was close to midnight, and something evil was lurking in the dark. And under the moonlight, Uhura saw something that almost stopped her heart. We're seeing dead people. I see dead people. As soon as a character starts to have apparitions, as soon as the narrator of the episode, in this case we'll say Uhura, in a general sense, becomes unreliable, now my brain is racing. I'm thinking, what else is fake? What else isn't real? Were you thinking this as well when you watched this? Everything Uhura saw after this point, I was questioning its veracity. Did she really see Kirk? Did she really see Pelia? When I tell people that I saw Kirk, they think I'm crazy. But when Pelia talks to Uhura, and Uhura talks back and thinks she really saw Pelia, I guess we're supposed to believe it. She's looking at a pad showing a video of how to recalibrate some sensors on the nacelles. Okay, the communications array channels through the nacelles in some way, and we're taking a walk down memory lane on a pad, and it broke my heart to see it, and the feeling was mutual. You could tell Uhura was sad. You know, everyone's really busy, and sometimes you just gotta do it yourself. Teach a cadet to fish, you know all that. So he taught me how to recalibrate this on a communication array system. And that's what she tells Pelia when Pelia discovers her in her nacelle. What are you doing in my nacelle? Yeah, so we kind of share a little moment about Hemmer. You know, Hemmer was taught by Pelia at the academy. Turns out he wasn't that great of a student, but look what he made of himself. That's the important thing. It wasn't an insult. It was saying, look, even Hemmer, he wasn't the best, but he became chief engineer on the Enterprise. Isn't that wonderful? Uhura's been having a busy day. Uhura's been burning the candle at both ends. You see, there's a few instances of what I call like the congratulatory dialogue I saw in this episode that kind of took me out of it. I'm not a big fan of it. Uhura, you're supposed to be burning the candle on one end. You're too busy. You're doing way too much work. I know. And then later on, Leanne says to Kirk, you're the type of person who can't let a stranger in need go unhelped. And I hear you're a stickler for rules, he says back to Leanne. And that's 3 different self-congratulatory. You write it into the episode to congratulate that character. That's why I say it's self-congratulatory, even though it's, you know, it's Pike talking to Uhura, Leanne talking to Kirk, and vice versa. It's just something that just seems strange. Like, if you're on the Enterprise, we know. We already know how good you are. You don't need to keep telling me. We're, like, in the 2nd season here. I believe it. I believe you. Like, you don't need to reiterate it over and over again. By the way, we needed Una's managerial fervor to bring this mission to fruition. Because the last person in charge of this got shuffled off somewhere because, you know, I don't know, unforeseen difficulties? Watch it again. Maybe the person who is in charge of this mission succumbed to the same thing that our crew succumbed to, without giving it away this early in the review. Just a thought I had. Kirk is now on the Enterprise. He beams over. Hey, Sam. What's going on, buddy? I guess they wanted the more handsome Kirk brother. And you can tell there's an immediate hostility here. But there's nothing wrong with the little sibling rivalry. There's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. They're kind of fighting, and it's like, I see you got promoted to first officer. Yeah, you're the youngest first officer ever in Starfleet. And who was the last one before you? It was your father, our father, George Kirk. Yeah, and Sam says, well, George has a very, antiquated idea of what it means to be successful. And I'm sure Sam is blowing out of the water. I'm sure he's proud of both of them. I'm sure he would be, without getting into it too deep. But Kirk kind of pushes back and says, oh, well, it's better than wallowing away in a science lab. Ugh. It came off wrong to me. But on second viewing, I kind of get, it's just kind of something he would say to his brother, right? It's not, as bad as, what we got in Tapestry in TNG when Picard ended up in a blue uniform, and we were meant to believe that was, a bad thing. It was unequivocally, stated that was bad to be in blue. And I was just thinking, well, no. Sciences make this stuff possible. That's important. And so that's one thing I would push back against with Tapestry. Totally different episode. This is Lost in Translation. I give it more of a break here. You were saying that, oh, look, Sam wears blue. What a loser. It's different when it's coming from your own brother. Right? You can tell Kirk knows. Kirk knows what he's saying. You can tell the way this is portrayed. Kirk won't give him an inch. And things that were supposed to be mean or spiteful, I just took it as humorous. I took it as the things that brothers do. I wouldn't know. I don't have a brother. But I don't know. I was willing to accept it. Kirk meets Uhura at the bar. Uhura's tired. Uhura's been through a lot lately. Uhura's been to the med bay asking Mbenga why I'm having these visions. I saw Hemmer. You may have a mild case of deuterium poisoning. Just get some rest. Sleep it off. I mean, we all see Hemmer now and then. Am I right? No, I'm not right. I don't see Hemmer. Not at all. It's just Uhura that's seeing Hemmer. You'll note that the first time she heard the aliens talking to her was before she went into the turbo lift. Very important. I would have told Mbenga that, but that's just me. That's just me. I'm not Uhura. Funny dialogue here, which written with a little bit more nastiness would have been very annoying. This is some good quips. The way the quips work in this, I like it. It's not a joke. It's just a funny way of doing things. Hey, you're friends with Sam. And then Uhura's like, I don't want to be hit on right now. And then Kirk says, oh, hey, you're friends with Sam. He says the same thing again, but lowers his tone. So good. That's how you write it. The minute something like that happens, you've hit it off. And from that point forward, this turns into a Kirk and Uhura action, buddy story, which played off to me very well. I mean, you can say maybe there's some sexual tension here between Uhura and Kirk. I don't know, but there definitely is between Leanne and Kirk. Leanne having known Kirk from an alternate timeline, and they do meet in this episode. See, everybody loves Kirk in this episode. It's just like TOS. Uhura's in love with Kirk. Leanne's in love with Kirk. I'm in love with Kirk. This is TOS again. We're back, baby. In a manner of speaking. Surely there's something wrong with the visuals, but maybe the Enterprise could go through another refit or two. Wink, wink. Uhura accidentally punches Kirk. Uhura's visions are getting out of control. She sees a hallway full of dead people. She sees dead people and turns around, punches herself, only to reveal that she has punched Kirk. Let's not go back to the med bay right now. We have a dermal regenerator in my quarters. Let's just get this fixed up. We don't want to worry the doctor any more than he is otherwise worried about Uhura. Is that a good call? Hiding things from the doctor? I don't know. We have a little discussion about death. Uhura has a hard time dealing with death. I'm in Starfleet, yet I can't handle death. I'm seeing death everywhere. I can't handle Hemmer dying. I can't handle my family dying. If you didn't know, when she lost her family in a shuttle accident, which was shoved into an early episode last season. It kind of has a point now. It actually kind of matters now, because in order for this story to be personal for Uhura, she would have had to experience death before Hemmer. She's experienced the death of Hemmer. She was close to Hemmer. We saw that visually on screen. It's working for me. It's not something that they inserted off screen to kind of, like siphon a feeling of boo-hoos out of the audience. It was something that really happened, right? Uhura really was becoming friends with Hemmer, which was why it hurt for Hemmer to die, which is why it hurt us and hurt her. Kirk delivers a great speech about not letting death win. And there's something clicked in my mind in this scene where the intensity of Kirk's delivery of this, the seriousness, and how up in your face he was about it, it seemed very not laid back in the way that Pike is. Pike seems bumbling, he seems hands off. And the way Kirk delivered this speech was a way that I don't think Pike could have done it. And it cemented for me this feeling that this could be Kirk. This is the first time where it felt like it for me. He said, you give in to death. Death washes over you. It takes over everything. But we're out here surrounded by death. And we're not letting death win. He personifies death as a thing that can beat you. And then he's challenging Uhura to beat death itself. And just the way this was delivered, the way it was written, it felt uniquely Kirk. It felt not Pike, which is important, right? And I bought it, right? At that moment, I bought it. And if this Kirk, if he just, by the time he becomes captain, put on 30 pounds, hit the gym a little bit, it's not, I can kind of start to see it. It's starting to feel more right than it has in the past. I'll give it that. We're not all the way there, but this scene was a big jump for me. Was it for you? If you were not buying this Kirk yet, he still looks a little bit gaunt. He looks a little thin. And I'm sorry, but visuals are a factor for me in getting this right. Yes, it is hard for me to accept this different looking Enterprise. Call me fickle. These different looking people, call me fickle. But in the context of the show alone, I think this is a step forward. Just purely in the performance and the writing. This episode is better than every other episode so far this season by a margin. I'm not going to say huge margin. You'll see when I deliver my final number for this review. But the margin is there. It is present. This is probably the first episode I'm going to rewatch, by the way. There's something going on in the deuterium manufacturing center here, which looked really cool on the inside. It looked genuinely huge when they were inside it. Una is just coming off bad in this episode. Una is just fighting with Pelia every step of the way. I mean, I can see an ensign having a problem, or maybe, lieutenant whatever complaining about Pelia because, we have a clash in how we do things. But First Officer Una? I don't think so. And I don't like the explanation that came up with later either. But Una seemed bad in this episode. You got crumbs on your uniform and blah, blah, blah. And she's saying this to the chief engineer that is responsible for fixing this gas factory that the Federation desperately needs. I wouldn't be saying that to Pelia, but Una seems to get away with it. And she makes Pelia back down in this weird way, and they're gonna snap at each other, and then Pelia, I give Pelia the upper hand here because Pelia was smart enough and old enough and wise enough to just let it go. She just puts down her pad, gets back to work. But guess what? Had we have done it your way, Una, we would not have detected the sabotage. We have les sabotage on this installation. What's going on? We find Ramon. There's another person who was part of, the Farragut crew, who was left on this refinery. sitting there, totally crazy mode. He's totally cray-cray. He's laying there, you'll note, in the same way, in the same position, that we see a cut to Uhura sitting. Uhura is sitting the same way on the Enterprise as Ramon is on the refinery. An interesting visual continuity here that's important to establish. Ramon's fate could also be the fate of Uhura. Okay? Ramon is being back up to the Enterprise. We need to look at this guy, what's going on. He has the same problem as Uhura. His is much more advanced. So what he could do, we know Uhura could end up doing. So we got a ticking clock element. Very well done. Ramon escapes. I thought Lan was a stickler for security, but I guess security was particularly lax that day. Ramon gets all the way up to the nacelle control room through the Jeffries tube in the nacelle pylon. Uhura is chasing after him. By the way, we just had a conversation about, could this happen to me? How long before I could turn crazy like Ramon? What if I kill people, just like Ramon tried to do? Remember that for later. Kirk follows Uhura to the they're going to the room, the access port for the nacelle. Kirk, Uhura says, I'm going to go after Ramon, you go off and do this. And then Kirk's like, okay, trust me, I can do this. And Kirk lets her go alone. And I remember just thinking, that's one of those decisions that seems bad the second after you make it. Is it a good idea to let Uhura, who was having hallucinations, walk all the way alone to the nacelle control room? I'm going to go no on that. And something bad does happen, because she gets to the door and then communicators to Kirk. I found this trail of blood. Ramon's going up to the control room, the nacelle. I'm going to follow him. And then Kirk says, wait for me. That would be a good idea. But Uhura decides to take the door off, go up the tube, and confront Ramon herself. It goes about as badly as you think. Hey, I'm real. I'm not a hallucination. I'm Uhura. I was born in Kenya. I had a cat or dog or whatever called something. I'm real. One thing leads to another. Fisticuffs ensue. And then he ejects the atmosphere from the room and blows off a panel on the side of the cell, which looked awesome. Sucked himself out into space. The next moment, we're transported just in time. Kirk managed to get an emergency transport to the medbay. And I'm thinking, oh, Pike's going to chew her out for this one. This is bad. No, Pike just kind of bumbles over and says, well, people are dead, and we don't know why. And he just kind of lets her off with it. She says to him, you should confine me to quarters, because I don't know what I could do next. I could be the one sabotaging the ship next. And then Pike's just like, why? Uhura has a very, very legitimate concern that she could turn as crazy as Ramon. So you should confine me to quarters. Why? Pike, what's he thinking? I don't know what's going on, but Pike seemed really, really hands-off, nonchalant, and unconcerned this episode. He came off that way to me. Maybe it's subjective, I don't know. But I would have listened to Uhura and maybe confined her to quarters for something bad happened. And say, Kirk, you go visit her and see what's up. But that's not what happens. She ends up back talking to Kirk, where Kirk has this scene about, I'll go get a cookie. We'll feel good if we eat this cookie. Everybody loves cookies. It was a good-looking cookie, I will say. But she has a revelation. She's going through her log, her little video, looking at Hemmer, and the communications we were receiving. We have to go mess around with that receiver because it was blown out at that time because of some signal that was too powerful for it. It blew it out. So there's a signal that was too powerful. We're in this deuterium field, and I received a communication that only I could hear that was ear-splitting and too powerful. It blew out the receiver in my mind. They're trying to communicate with us. There's somebody there. And Sam, we introduced Sam for a reason. Remember what I said? This episode fits together like a well-designed puzzle. Sam is here to get the win. They go down to Sam's science lab that Kirk was chiding him over. I heard that there were alien beings from other dimensions who tried to play with their minds to tell us things that they can't otherwise communicate through normal means. They don't have the same kind of technology that we do. Their technology and our technology can't shake hands, essentially. What's going on here? The three of them, always very cool to see three different divisions working together. We have red, blue, and yellow in the same scene. It looks so cool when they're all together. A rare treat to have them all condensed like that, and one for each color. That's right. So they kind of do a Star Trek thing, and Sam, Kirk, and Uhura all kind of reason that there's an alien out there in the deuterium. Sam says the aliens are the deuterium. They are a deuterium-based life form. We're sucking them up into this refinery. We're putting them into the Enterprise. We're killing them. We're torturing them. And that's why they're showing us images of death. They can't communicate through normal means, but what they're saying is that they're causing death. And we're trying to show you death. We're showing you what we're experiencing. Not the first time this has ever happened in Star Trek. There's been many kinds of aliens that have difficulty communicating with us on many different occasions. And this time we're kind of using a spooky horror angle to it, which is an interesting touch in an episode with an otherwise quaint tone to it. It's weird, but it works. Tell me you didn't notice these tones kind of seeming like they conflict and then kind of become parallel by the end. Just as a brief aside, we go back up to the bridge. Pike, you got to turn off this refinery right now. We can't do it. We already started it 5 minutes ago. We can't turn it off again. Remember, Ramon had tried to sabotage this. Sabotage. He was trying to stop the torture of these creatures in the deuterium field. Sadly, we had to lose Ramon in the process. We're able to instantaneously convince Pike of this. Kirk and Uhura are there on the bridge. I think Sam was there too. Pike, destroy that refinery and vent the deuterium we have in the Enterprise. Okay. Why? How would... What had led to this point where Pike would have considered that to be reasonable? Pike was not along for the plot that we were on. Pike did not learn it as we were learning it, that there were these creatures in this deuterium field. It seems really convenient that we convinced him that easily. Earlier in this review, I said there was a Spock-shaped hole in this episode. We had one throwaway scene with Spock and Chapel talking about their relationship. And please, for the love of God, do not make that Spock's whole shtick for the rest of this show, the rest of the season. Don't just make it about tension between Chapel and Spock. Please, don't just keep doing that. Just leave it at this. They're playing chess and talking about their relationship. Yada, yada, yada. You know what Spock could have did in this episode? Spock, do a mind meld with Uhura. Another way to solve this, I was thinking that maybe Sam, Kirk, and Uhura could work together with Mbenga, get Mbenga involved, call up the medical records of Uhura that she recently had when she was in the medbay, and use it to devise some kind of brain-computer interface where she could have the signal go to her brain act as a universal translator, and then go into the computer, and then have the computer read out what they're saying, and then show that to Pike. That would have been cool. Maybe would have added a little bit of technobabble to the episode, but it would have been an even greater win for Sam Kirk. and a cool way to bring in some new technology or something like that, but the Spock way could have worked. I can think of there's two different options to get Pike more on board with this idea. Instead, Pike, we're just relying on him to be so open-minded, like way more than would otherwise be reasonable for a captain. He goes along with it, and he orders Ortegas to just blow up that refinery. Uhura says it. Pike gives the nod. Fair enough. And they just blow it up. And I'm thinking, like, imagine the confusion of everyone on the ship. What did we just do? Imagine just being some guy on that ship and being like, hey, yo, we just showed up here at this refinery. We got it working, and now we're blowing it up? What's that about? That's what I always wonder what the person at the bottom of the ladder is thinking all the time on these episodes. I'm always wondering what they're thinking. Like, they must be so confused all the time. They're just thinking, just do what I'm told, just accept it, just do what I'm told, and I'll be fine. Don't worry about what's going on. Leave it to the captain, because it is too complicated for me to understand. All the way down here on the lower bottom decks, as it were. Yeah, so we could have solved this with Spock mind meld. We could have solved it with some technobabble from Sam Kirk. But we did end up with a scene at the very end, bookending this episode. Sam is back at the bar with Kirk and Uhura. They're sharing some drinks. Sam says, like, well, you know what I was thinking? I was sorry about everything I said about our father and all that. And you know what? You're really good. I'm proud of you for being first officer on the Farragut. Waiting for Kirk to say sorry back for making fun of his science lab, which just saved the day, kind of. And Kirk, like, I know Kirk knows better. I know he knows better. I can tell, but he's not saying it. And he just won't say it. For what? Sorry for what? Being so competent? I let out one of these claps when I saw it, and I was just like, oh, I know that Kirk doesn't think that. You know he doesn't think that. He's just doing that to Sam. We know that he knows. We're in on it. Uhura's probably in on it too. But Sam is off in space somewhere. In this case, literally. It was so cute. And we didn't end off the episode without a little introduction between Kirk and Spock. See, it matters to us. But because it's written in this episode for the purposes of the audience, we have an awkward scene where they just kind of meet each other. Hello. Hello. Handshake. When would that happen for any other character? I don't know. So it kind of broke the fourth wall for me. But I'll give it a pass. It's right at the end. Like, normally, if Kirk met, I don't know, we'll just, Lieutenant McCormick, just some random character. Hello. Hello, mister. I'm Kirk. Oh, hello. Handshake. Goodbye. You would wonder why the heck that was put in the episode. But because this is Spock, we know that there's significance in this meeting. And the writers knew, so they wrote it in there. Despite the fact that it breaks the reality somewhat of the scene to have a scene right at the end where two characters just meet. Is that a member berry? As people in my comments are often want to call it. I don't know. It could be in a certain sort of roundabout way. But we end off in the bar, everybody having a good time. Good time had by all. Sorry Ramon's dead. And then the door to the bar closes. Some great way to end your episode visually. Great way to end a good episode. I wouldn't say great way to end a great episode, but I would say a great way to end a good episode. That was lost in translation. Thematically, you have to dig, but like a good perfume, it doesn't announce itself. It has to be discovered. You'll notice that we have a specific conversation about Kirk and Sam talking about their parent, their father. They are seeing themselves, one in sciences, one as first officer, how to commingle and redeem themselves, especially in Sam's case. Redeem themselves against the image that their father had for them. So they're in this they're going on a redemptive journey to win the day, to win the respect of each other, and in turn, their father. Think to why Uhura had visions of death, visions of Hemmer, but most importantly, visions of her parents. Her parents died in that shuttle accident, which we got to see a flashback of in this episode. Was it a dream, or was it something literally brought on by the deuterium aliens? I don't know. But her parents seemed to die for no reason. They came back in this episode to show her death, to show her that they're dying, that being the aliens. Kirk says not to let death win. She realizes that this vision isn't real, and she has to get past it. To convert death into fuel for life. So we're converting the death of the deuterium aliens into fuel that we need to go on our next great adventure. Don't worry, Starfleet can build another gas plant somewhere else. It's about parents, right? It's about redeeming your parents or redeeming yourself in front of your parents. And for the first time in Strange New Worlds, the death of Uhura's parents felt like it had meaning. At the very end, we see an image of Hemmer very much alive. We saw, the aliens showed us dead Hemmer, zombie Hemmer. Now they show us living Hemmer. And I wish he was back. But he's not. But in that way, I feel the sting of that death the same way Uhura does. So we're going on the same journey Uhura is in this episode. It works on multiple levels. The theme of death, the theme of defeating death, and the theme of winning in the eyes of our parents. When you're wondering what the theme of an episode is, look for the last scene. That's important. Whatever they show you at the end, what they show at the end was very intentionally that Hemmer came back alive, the vision of Hemmer, and Kirk and Sam arguing. An argument born from how they felt about their father. That's very important. There's a reason it's in there. However, I cannot understand the reason for the Spock and Chapel scene. I can't understand that one. We're just playing chess. Should we tell Starfleet about our relationship? Should we not? I don't know. Una came off so caustic towards Pelia, and at the last moment they just kind of stuck in a line. Oh, you're mad at me because I replaced Hemmer, who you liked, and you're still sore about losing Hemmer, and you think I'm replacing him, which I am, and that's why you're mad. But you can go on and pretend that it's because I gave you that seed. From Una? Like, I would accept this if this was someone who was not the first officer, but first officer, I expect a certain degree of professionalism. And I just wasn't believing it from Una. Maybe it worked for you. For me, Una was just, he just came off. What do they want? You know what? We need some more drama. Let's write it in. And at the last minute, we'll just say it's because she's mad because Hemmer was replaced by Pelia. And I don't know. I never, was there some big relationship between Una and Hemmer that would otherwise cause her to break her professional decorum? That was more like a Uhura Hemmer thing, like crewman, like, you know, cadet Uhura, immature, new, fresh, and the old curmudgeon that was Hemmer. They were attached to each other, right? That was kind of, but you'll notice that Uhura is a lot more positive towards Pelia, and then Una is just coming off as a complete curmudgeon to Pelia, and I just didn't buy it. It just didn't feel right to me. In my opinion, it lowered my opinion of Una a little bit. Uhura and Una. There's two characters whose name starts with a U. What are the chances of that? That was lost in translation. Visually scrumptious. I love the scenes inside of the refinery. Very cool. I loved. There's very cool piece of music that plays when Kirk meets Leanne, and they have that moment of tension where Leanne knows more about Kirk than Kirk knows more about Leanne, because Leanne met Kirk in the alternate timeline. And it's like something that we know that he doesn't understand. And it's just this interesting musical little melody, I should say, that kind of plays, and it's plucking at your heartstrings the same way it's plucking at the strings of some kind of instrument. I thought it was very nice musically, and along with the visuals too. We got to see the Bessard Collector open up. Very cool. We got to see the refinery blow up, unfortunately, if you could say that's a good thing. Visually, a lot of winds, a lot of interesting moving around on the ship with different lighting schemes. And we're going into the control room of the nacelle, and we're looking up into a Jeffries tube. Very cool. Musically, it's all right. It's not amazing. Thematically, it's covering its bases. Plot-wise, holes. That's where we're failing. We needed Spock to do a mind meld to help here. Some person's having hallucinations. They're having a hard time explaining what's going on in those hallucinations. Spock, you're up. Ball's in your court, Spock. Except the writers didn't really realize that. Bad Pike episode. Pike just came off as not caring, just kind of like ho-hum, bumbling Pike, as I've come to call him. That's a little bit disappointing. So we're winning on 3 out of 4 fronts. Winning on music, winning on visuals, winning on theme. Plot could be better. But all in all, the writing here, the puzzle-like way in which the plot fits together, the better insights you get on a second watch, it puts it ahead of the previous episodes, I will say that. So with all that being said, Lost in Translation, Strange New World, Season 2, Episode 6, I'm going to go ahead and give this episode a 6.5. Not bad. The first good, I'll say, episode of Strange New World Season 2 that doesn't require any kind of explanation behind it. I may be coming back to this one. I feel like there could even be more hidden secrets buried inside the script here. But that's beyond the purview of this review. I'm Lieutenant Merrick, and I'm going to see you when next time I see you. So long.